Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fifth annual Library Comic Con event. I want to welcome you. This is a week-long event culminating in our final Library Comic Con takeover, which is happening on Friday, October 26th. I should have looked that up, but somebody will correct me or I'll have it pop up. This
24th.
24th, thank you. Uh, October 24th, well, we will have a number of activities in the library, including a panel with James Asmus, and then even some Nerf blaster competitions, and then Lego space races. So definitely join us for that if you have the opportunity. Today, I'm here with my colleagues, Teen Librarian Caitrin, Young Teen Librarian Amy, and of course myself. I'm the Adult Services Librarian here, and we're here to talk about science fiction, and specifically science fiction in literature, because when we were originally proposing this discussion, and I was talking to Caitrin, who wanted to do this topic so badly, I'm like, I don't think I read much of science fiction in graphic novels, and this is going to be really hard. And then we got to discussing like what science fiction actually meant and how broad the topic actually is. And we had a riveting discussion. It was very passionate, agreeing. But overall, we came to the conclusion that I think most people would benefit from this discussion and hearing from our recommendations. So, Katrin, tell us what sci-fi means to you and why you wanted to talk about it today.
Thank you. So the reason I was kind of pushing sci-fi is because first and foremost, I love sci-fi. I am a big sci-fi fan. I read it in novels and graphic novels, and the weirder the better. I love weird books, even like, fantasy or whatever genre. I like them to be weird, and sci-fi is full of weird. So that is why it is one of my favorite genres. But I did notice, however, when I am in the teen room doing reader recommendations, I get a lot of people who are very wary of it. A lot of people who will just straight out say, I don't like sci-fi. And I should take that at face value, but with a genre that is such a constellation of other genres, such as sci-fi. Yes, stars. Pin in the stars. Uh, I kind of want to make sure that when I'm recommending a sci-fi book to someone, they know that it's not necessarily going to be in space, have to do with spaceships, have lasers, uh, even have, any sort of, technology, really. It doesn't have to, because sci-fi includes so much more than that. So anything that has to do with time travel, technically sci-fi. We had a great discussion about zombies, often sci-fi, because there is an attempt to explain it based on the knowledge that we have. So that's why I think sci-fi has definitely, people have tried to rename it. We have tried speculative fiction, which I feel like is most fiction.
It
In
is.
some ways, in some ways, speculative fiction is like, yeah, that's most fiction. Um, but I think the when you're searching for a through thread that connects all sci-fi, there is sort of that basis in what we know or theories that connect somewhat to science or like quantum science, anything like that. So that's why time travel is included. That's why viral zombies are included. Um, doesn't count if they're voodoo, doesn't count. Um, but if the zombies are science-based, then
Yeah.
those count as sci-fi. There's also, dystopian, which is hugely popular in YA, and kind of still continues to be. You definitely still see dystopian books coming out. Um, and I think a lot of people, when I say sci-fi, they think spaceships, or they think of one of those famous not sci-fi, properties, Star Wars. Sarah and I love to talk about how Star Wars is not super duper sci-fi. It's mostly fantasy. It's space fantasy. There are wizards. They use magic. So, we would classify that more as kind of like on the, that bridge between sci-fi and fantasy. But I think that it's still like a Venn diagram. So there's like lots that will overlap and stuff like that. It has definite elements of sci-fi in it. It still uses, like technology that we kind of like, oh, robots, robots with advanced intelligence, things like that. So I just like to impress upon people that when I say sci-fi, I'm talking about this whole cosmos of genres that just don't fit neatly into another genre. So that's why I love it.
Yeah,
Anyone
no,
else?
no, we were you basically fired a shot and like people are probably if they love Star Wars, they're probably maybe feeling a little bit angry with what you just said. However, we often categorize Star Wars in our science fiction collection here in adult services. And so it has kind of redefined what science fiction is. But when you think wholeheartedly about what it actually represents, it's like we said, speculative fiction. So really, this is like politics in space with people who can control magical elements to the force, to control people, to control inanimate objects, to fly in the air or travel through space. And so it's kind of interesting that we often consider something science fiction just because they have ships or spaceships
Yeah.
specifically. And so I'm not going to stop anybody from classifying this as science fiction. One of my favorite shows of all time growing up was Star Trek. So it's one of those things that like you equally just people exploring space, but those have often been one is definitely sci-fi for a lot of people, Star Trek, because people are exploring strange new worlds, meeting alien races and then exploring new technologies and advancements. And that's what's kind of culminated as a definitive sci-fi staple. Whereas Star Wars, people are like, spaceships, it's automatically spaceships. And then we were talking, I'm like, well, what makes how can we rule out zombie, fiction? Because again, it's speculative, but a lot of times it's, people are trying to overcome the elements. It's often a viral infection of some sort that wipes everybody out. And there's people in the background trying to put it together. Now, of course, it could be more apocalyptic with people trying to survive, and that's often what it follows. So oftentimes that's just kind of in fiction instead of in our sci-fi area. But a lot of people have justifiably argued that zombies can be in the sci-fi realm as well. So we're moving forward with just kind of things. Some of them are in space. Some of them are, just I think most of ours are in space just because, those make for fun things. However, just moving forward, just know that it's not, it's a I find it might be easier to define a cozy mysteries than it is to find a just solid fantasy or sorry, a solid sci-fi thing. So we're moving forward with just a general definition that, it has to do with the sciencey aspects, but that equally doesn't mean that it has to be in space. So, so I would like to invite Amy to get us started off with.
Okay, cool. So I was worried that we might not have science fiction for the younger grades. But I came across this series. I don't have the first book. I read it on my Kindle, but we had this one on the shelf. See, this is why I don't like this. It's Claude, and he's an evil alien warlord cat. So he lives on the planet. One of the reasons okay, number one, this book is hilarious. I laughed. Its humor reminded me of The Hitchhiker's Guide because it was just ridiculous and silly and a lot of fun. And sometimes you didn't get it right away and you had to think about it. It has that dry humor. And so Claude lives on a planet called Litterbox, but it's spelled Lyttyrbokks. And it's
Cute.
but it's litter box. And I just want to show you the format of the book. It's pretty wide spaced. They're quick reads, and there's pictures in them, which I absolutely adored the art in here. I think we'll put in one of the pictures that was my favorite from the first book that I read. But anyway, so Claude lives on Litterbox, and he is not the greatest ruler. He's pretty awful, and he ends up getting exiled to this really quiet planet in a far corner of the world where ogres lived, and the name of the planet is Earth. of course. So most of the story takes place on Earth. So I was like, well, is it science fiction or is it not? But Claude is determined to get back to Litterbox, and he is trying to build a teleporter. And there's all of these really sciencey things that are in the book. So he lands with this great big green explosion in Earth, and there's liquid falling from the sky, and he hates it. So he's dripping wet, not knowing what to do. He sees a fortress. So he goes up to the fortress and he thinks that there's this button that he can push that will open the portal. Of course, he pushes the button, it ding dongs, nothing happens. He pushes the portal again. He's wondering if it's like DNA that they read or an
Mm.
eye scan. He's trying to figure out how it works. And all of a sudden, the door opens and he's confronted with this mid-size, hairless ogre. And he just is terrified. He's like, do I go in with the ogre or do I go back into the falling liquid? Of course, he goes in, and the ogre that he's with is named Raj, and he had just moved from New York, where he had everything. He's 11 years old, a middle schooler. So the important things, a pizza parlor right by him, a comic book store that he could walk to, three friends in his apartment, but his family had just moved him to Oregon, of all places, where he thinks there's absolutely nothing. And so he's feeling kind of down and out, and he's ecstatic to all of a sudden think he might have a pet cat. So he welcomes Claude in, whose real name, by the way, is Whiskas. Um,
Oh no.
yeah, it's pretty cute. And so, all sorts of hijinks happen. And Claude can talk, but Raj does not know that at first. And Raj has to go off to this horrible nature camp, but it's actually a survival camp. And the camp counselor is a little bit, has lost his marbles and is kind of over the top with everything. And Raj ends up getting pitted in this survival night. And it's very harrowing, but it's all of the middle school things like trying to fit in, feeling unsure of yourself. And of course, that middle school humor is in there as well. So not to give too much away, Claude realizes that he needs Raj's help to get back. So he starts speaking to Raj. He learns the English language, which he thinks is horrible and ugly. He's quite demeaning of us ogres here. And they end up building a teleporter together, and then, things happen. Lessons are learned, and with a lot of humor, though. Yeah, it was. I gave it 5 stars. It was really good, and it's the first book in a series of 5, so good for read alouds or reading on your own. It was quite enjoyable.
And that's something we don't touch is aliens, like in our
Very true.
introduction, which is often grouped into sci-fi and often just as equally like, is that more speculative about who we might meet and stuff like that? But it's often grouped into sci-fi. And, I feel like that's fine and rightfully so. So it sounds
I concur.
adorable. I love the wordplay on
I
the
loved
name.
the wordplay. It
Yeah,
was great. Yeah,
I'm a
I'm
sucker
so
for
glad that he landed in Oregon. That's awesome.
right? That was a nice surprise for me too. I was like, oh, Oregon.
it.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Aw.
Oh, I just want to mention who it's by. Johnny Marciano wrote it, and then Emily Chenoweth, um, I believe, is who lives in Oregon, and she did the art, which is great. So
Yay.
very good.
Excellent. Caitrin, lead us off with your first recommendation.
Okay. So my recommendations, I have 5. Um, I sort of tried to stretch out over a few genres
Mhm.
connected in the sci-fi genre. And they are in the teen room and also some adult books. So the one that I am going to feature now, I chose, it's a graphic novel. And I was actually looking for manga to use because I have done that. I like manga. And it seemed almost a little bit too easy. So in manga, there's actually a lot of sci-fi, like Dragon Ball Z sci-fi, obviously. Even like My Hero Academia, which is superheroes, which is another thing that often falls under sci-fi. And so that's why I chose
That's
this
an
book.
interesting argument.
It is, and I love it. But I chose this book, which is published by DC. It is called Galaxy, the Prettiest Star, and it takes place in their extended universe. Let's see that there. Okay, so in this extended universe, Superman exists. He is an alien from another planet. That has been established on Earth, which is very important to this book. So Galaxy, the Prettiest Star is about Taylor, who is uh, actually an alien princess who had to escape her planet due to political unrest and is living on Earth disguised as a human boy. And I think this book was perhaps meant as sort of like a trans analogy, but for several reasons, I don't think it quite works that way, but it is a cute book. Uh, First and foremost, she switched bodies back and then back. So, so that's a whole complication. And so it's kind of sold as a layer of security that she is a boy on this planet. So she's kind of grappling with like being who she is, and then also kind of surviving high school as a boy who is, he's on the basketball team and has friends and stuff like that. She meets a girl that she starts to have feelings for who comes from outside the city, and reveals that, oh, she's this alien princess, and is convinced to kind of take a risk, much to the dismay of her family, which is her security detail, basically. And so she starts attending school as this alien princess. And so there's not the reveal of like, oh my God, aliens. It's like these students are like, alien at our school, not on my watch. but there are like some good things in there, like talking to one of her friends on the basketball team who feels really betrayed, that she never mentioned anything about her alien origins or anything like that, and starts arguing, well, like, I was friends with the Taylor I knew. And so there's like some conversations like that I think are kind of intended to be like sort of this trans analogy. The art is beautiful. I will put up a picture here. That's not a good page. There we go. Oh, that's also not a good page. We'll put up a good page. The art is beautiful. And it, kind of leans into like her alien origins. She has this fuchsia skin and this aqua hair, and it's really, really pretty. Hence the prettiest star. So it's a good read. She has my favorite character is Argus, who is her corgi. Argus, I believe, is a AI, a robot, basically, corgi, who records everything for security reasons. And he is very duty bound. I love Argus. So he's kind of one of my favorite characters in the whole book. But it's a cute read. It's a good, a little bit like departure from the DC universe, but still kind of interconnected, so that we could go from the point of aliens are here, let's move on. So that is my pick.
I can't wait to discuss. There's not enough time to discuss that proposal that superheroes are naturally like science fiction. So I look forward to having that discussion.
They put a lot in to superheroes. So superheroes is almost another constellation, because you do have two people existing in the same universe that like, my origin is magic, my origin is science, and they come together and we're like, great, I love it. But yeah, so that's kind of one of the ways in which science fiction just really kind of like is this Venn diagram, a sprawling one, I might add.
Excellent. Thank you. So my first recommendation did go full sci-fi. It's called, when I was like, oh, I don't know if I have anything, and then I looked at my shelf and I totally had this. It's called Man's Best. It is by Pornsak Pichetso, and I listened to this a couple of times before doing this, and I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing it, so I'm sorry. But also illustrated by Jesse Lonergan. And I had the opportunity to listen to Pornsak speak at Emerald City Comic Con this year, and it was an absolute delight. He was on a panel about cats. We were just talking about cats in media and comic books, so it was so cute. So this was advertised as Homeward Bound in Space, and it's basically the the driving force of this. You have these three companion animals who are going exploring the vast solar system with their human companions. One has a bionic leg. They all have mech suits, which you are able to see in here. And of course, I'm going to have some illustrations going up at over this point. Uh, but during their travels, their humans go disappearing, and it's up to them to save them. And then it is following their adventures trying to save their humans. So of course you have the cats with her two dogs, and the cat's like kind of the leader, although they fight over that all the time. But the leader, and then the two dogs are following and just trying to rescue their animals. Obviously, this is science in space. I love the manipulation of, using technology to help your cats speak to you, your animals speak to you. I'm like, this is how science should be done. This is what we should be focusing on. But I loved, this was kind of the most cut and dry, like science fiction example that I had on my shelves, because everything after that kind of, all my recommendations at this point are books. So I really want to recommend this book. It's beautifully illustrated. If you're not familiar with Homeward Bound, that's basically just animals trying to return to their human companions. I can't really explain more because then I'm just giving away massive elements of the book. So that's why the whole Homeward Bound space has often been just an excellent promotional tool when I'm recommending it. So that is my first recommendation.
Yay.
Amy, what's your next recommendation?
All right. Oddly enough, I have another cat book. It's literally called The Space Cat. And you can see Periwinkle right there, who I adore and I wish that we all had. This is a graphic novel, um, beautifully illustrated, really saturated, and just um, super interesting to look at. A lot of details. Periwinkle's lair, I spent forever looking at that page because, as Periwinkle says, he has everything there and it's all depicted in the drawing, which is great. The author is Nnedi Okorafor, and it's illustrated by Tana Ford. And I think that not that it's biographical by any means, but there's end pages that talk about Nnedi's actual cat that is named Periwinkle and looks like the one in the book. So that's just a kind of little nice bonus in there. And it starts off, you kind of have to get used to the language. In this book, this space cat talks kind of like a toddler. The first page says, "Hi, my name, Pumpernickel Pickle Periwinkle Oh, goodness. My eyes gave out on me. Chukwu Okorafor. And then it said, "You call me Periwinkle." So leaving out some of the words. And at first I thought, oh, am I going to be able to do it? But it totally works and it makes Periwinkle very endearing. I think it's a great element in this. So Periwinkle is adopted by a mom and a daughter. And he is totally not into it. He's very vicious. He's standoffish for the first 3 months, and they keep trying, and they're very patient, and he just won't have it. And then one night, he just jumps into Nettie's lap, and he says, "I trust." And so the story just goes from there. I know. It's great. And so he has this layer where he's just accumulated all this stuff. It's funny that my two cats are so similar with science and being able to build, but he has made a spaceship for him to go travel and explore the universe. At the very beginning, his mom had told him that his dad was from Neptune. So I don't know if he's looking for his dad, but that's kind of, I think he's out there looking for his people. And so he just travels and likes to go really fast. And there's this other orange cat there that Periwinkle calls a person, but it's a cat, and he's named this cat Orange Meow. And they like to race through space, and they're very competitive, and they don't speak through the whole thing until the very end, but I won't give that away. So midway through the story, Periwinkle has settled in. He's loving his humans, doing great exploring, and then mom drops the bomb that they're going to go live in Nigeria for a little bit while she finishes her book. So on the flight, Periwinkle is in the cargo hold of the airplane, and there's all these other animals there. And this dog says, "Oh, they don't like cats in Nigeria." at all. Like, you better watch your back, basically. And it was kind of scary. And they worship dogs, but they don't see cats as pets. So when he first arrives, there's all of these rogue cats out there that are kind of tough and, just look a little beat up and harried. And they're not mean, but they're not overly friendly. And then Periwinkle ends up saving an owl. And owls and cats, I guess, don't get along. After Periwinkle saved the owl, somebody was like, you know that owls eat cats. But it had made this bond between Periwinkle and this owl. So when a mean owl came to get Periwinkle and eat him, the other owl stood up for him. And so they kind of all united together because the Nigerians also don't trust owls. They think that cats and owls are witches. So there was this witch hunter out there trying to get rid of them all. And it's like this huge storyline that kind of is just skimmed over. But at the end of the day, I think it's really about trusting, number one, as we said at the very, very beginning, and just being there for each other. And it had me when I was reading it on the airplane, actually, and the guy next to me kept looking over at me like, what is this lady reading? And I was just so into it that I didn't even care. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You never need to justify anything you read. So,
I know.
yeah.
He's just jealous.
He
Yeah, he
was
was
just
jealous.
jealous. Those beautiful pictures.
Caitrin, what's your next book?
Okay. So the order I went in, I kind of went from the most sci-fi-ish to a few surprises. But I had to put this one in here because it is by one of my favorite authors. And I like that we have already mentioned Douglas Adams in this video because I feel like he is definitely a pillar in the sci-fi authorship community. This is another author whose book really reminded me of his work. Obviously, Hitchhiker's Guide. Most people know that, so we haven't put that one in the video. But if you haven't read it, read it. It's really funny. So the book I am suggesting is Space Opera by Caitrin M. Valente. She is amazing. She is an amazing wordsmith, and she actually has a couple of sci-fi books. This is the most classically sci-fi book, I guess. And I'll talk a little bit more about her other one in a second. But Space Opera is it has been described as like a mixture of Ziggy Stardust and Douglas Adams. And yeah. So the premise is that all of the sentient beings in the universe, which at this point does not include humans, come together and have basically a singing contest, like like America's Got Talent, anything, The Voice, anything like that. They have one of those to determine what backwater planet gets to attain the prestige of being considered sentient. And if you lose, you're destroyed. So
Whoa.
Earth has come into their crosshairs. And so they send an invitation to Earth. It's like, you need to send your singer to this contest. If they, win, you will be considered sentient. You'll be part of the galactic community. If you lose, we will destroy you. So people on Earth are kind of panicking, and they have this whole list of pop stars that they're going to go through. And so they're going through the list of pop stars. Can't do it, is dead, can't do it. And they arrive finally at this like washed up washed up member of an old like rock band, basically. And they kind of like just drag him out of the muck. His band has split up. His drummer is dead. His bassist just wants to be a normal person. And they're like, it's gonna be you. You got to go to space. And so a lot of like the sci-fi elements are really kind of glazed over. And I think that in sort of this comedic fashion, sort of like Douglas Adams, you get to space, there's all these aliens who are like the craziest things. Like, they're not just like the human with a thing on their forehead. It's like, it has like a bird neck and a gelatinous body, stuff like this. Their cultures are all described. There's like pages of just like random tangents about like these different planets. And it's great and really funny. They talk about like the previous winners who basically, I think they did like a blood ritual on stage. So a lot of the songs that win are not like songs as you would we would think of them on Earth. They are, it is the whole galaxy is open, so it's more of like a performance issue. So anywho, now Decibel Jones and his band, the Absolute Zeros, are well, his bassist, whom he drags along with him into space, who is Ort St. George, something like that. Amazing. Ort St. George and Decibel Jones go to space. And so they have this person who's like repping them, who is like an alien with like a weird bird head. And they enter this contest, and there's a lot of like, can we do it? And then like butting heads, and uh not to give anything away, but there like comes an issue where like Decibel like can't actually sing, just complications upon complications. I will not give away the rest of the book, but it is an amazing one. It is zany and fun, and I feel like the cover is basically that's the vibe, very like spacey in space. So it's a super fun book. This one is in the adult section and definitely belongs there. So for adult readers, this one is a great option. Uh, I did mention that Caitrin and Valente had another one that I just recently read. So that is called Radiance. And I just have to describe like what this book is, just to like let you know how bizarre sci-fi can be. So basically, Radiance takes place in a world where we have traveled and to the far reaches of the solar system. We have colonized space it by like the 1920s. Um, and so then the film era begins, but it's all like 1920s themes. So it's like golden age Hollywood in space, I want to say. And there's a mystery having to do with a documentary filmmaker who disappears on a Venusian colony. Again, the planets are just sort of treated as planets. There's some addressing the fact that like there is a colony on Uranus and it is a gas giant, but they have like this weird culture that like, there's this once midnight comes around like once every several years or whatever. And it's like this floating colony. It's crazy. But again, a lot of like the science is sort of glossed over. And I feel like that is one thing that does deter a lot of people from the science fiction genre, like especially like taking place in space, or like, I don't want to get bogged down in what laser does what, or like anything like that. You know, this doesn't, you don't have to know because Decibel Jones doesn't know. um, so those are my picks from Caitrin Valente, who is a great science fiction author, amongst other things. So highly recommend.
I totally want to read space opera.
Yeah. I like to play on words because space opera is a theme. In
Yeah.
fact,
It
a lot
is.
of people have classified Star Wars as a space opera. And but I love that it is like that is like Rick and
Literally
Morty
what it is.
clearly ripped that episode off when they were creating one of their episodes, which had a near identical uh 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 storyline to it. So I'm like, that's interesting. Yeah, I can imagine how dark that went. So my next pick, so I'm gonna move some things around because I was originally gonna talk about one book, but then you mentioned Douglas Adams, and I'm like, well, my pick. So I feel like John Scalzi is a kind of household name. He likes to flirt with sci-fi a lot, so he's often put in our science fiction section, but a lot of his things are kind of more speculative. So his most recent book, When the Moon Hit Your Eye, speculates what would happen if the moon turned to cheese. And I love it. It was an absolutely hilarious book. Totally Douglas Adams vibes, where there's like observations of the human psychology and how we make decisions and stuff like that. It's in our science fiction section because, of course, there's a lot of scientific debate about what happens, the political outcomes of those debates, the kind of religious debates. Again, more speculative. The reason why I'm bringing him up though is because he did write a book called Red Shirts, which is how I got introduced to the science fiction realm, and it is one of my favorite, still just absolutely hilarious books. Red Shirts is about our very well beloved characters in Star Trek, um, the Star Trek show as well as the movies. The Richards are often known for dying. Often they get sent with their commanders and then they die, something happens to them. And so they have become iconically known as Richards, or people who are not expected to survive until the end of the episode or the end of the season, the sacrificial characters, as you will. In this book, it breaks the fourth wall because a lot of the red shirt people, the people who are just in the background typically, are noticing that their leaders and commanders are often making irrational decisions out of the blue. They will be in the middle of giving orders and then stop and make the most opposite decisions that they could possibly make. And everybody is like, what is going on? Like this usually very astute, well-mannered person, very calm under pressure, is suddenly making these decisions, which are putting us all at risk. And so as you're going along, this kind of has a Stranger Than Fiction vibe, where the people are slowly realizing that they are in a show. So it has multiple perspectives, but it does tend to follow a few specific people. But I just love that aspect in that it takes it's very satiric in addressing just what happened, the obviousness that happened on this iconic sci-fi show, Star Trek, and it kind of added those fun elements you were talking about, how time travel might be one. Breaking the fourth wall is definitely another one that is often incorporated into sci-fi, where it's just like people get to take a second. This is in The Martian too, where they get to take a second and like almost talk to the audience type of thing. The Martian by Andy Weir, by the way, where they're breaking that conversation with the people are recognizing that stuff is happening in the background that isn't right and stuff like that. So if you're looking for some Douglas Adams recommendations, just people having fun with this idea of space travel, or he's also written books on kaiju, so monsters and people who are often flirting with science fiction, but absolutely having fun with it. And, often considered sci-fi. I say flirting, but again, what is speculative? What is sci-fi? I consider him sci-fi, even though it's people will greatly argue with me on that account. But yeah, I had to throw that in there now because he often reminds me of the humor of Douglas Adams. So okay, Amy.
Oh, that one sounds good. Okay, this is my last book. I just have three. And we're departing from the alien cats and jumping over to superheroes, which, back to the very first conversation, I didn't know if a superhero would be considered sci-fi. So Caitrin and I talked about it, and she's like, oh, yeah, definitely.
Here,
And
talk
this
to me
one,
first. I'm just kidding.
we share an office. So this one is Boy 2.0 by Tracy Baptiste, who also wrote The Jumbies, which was a very popular elementary and middle school book. And a few of us here at the library have read it and really, really like it. So Cole is a kiddo that's in foster care and kind of jumps from family to family. And also has a really hard time trusting, just like Periwinkle did in our other book. So doesn't trust, and he lands with this family, the McKays, and they're loud and they're boisterous, and they're nosy and just always up in his business. And he's not used to this at all. He's used to just being allowed to do his own thing. So it starts out really normal, not sciencey at all, but Cole gets upset one time and needs some time to himself. So he takes his piece of chalk and he goes and he does artwork out on the streets, which he does a lot. I like that they just use chalk and not like spray paint or anything. It's just going to wash away in the rain. So he's doing that, and this guy comes out with a gun and is threatening Cole, and it's quite scary. And Cole takes off running, and the guy pursues, and then there's other people, and unbeknownst to Cole, they can't see him. All of a sudden, the people can no longer see him. And he has a tough time wrapping his head around this and figuring out why, because everything felt the same to him. He got kind of tingly. But then when he becomes visible again, he doesn't have any clothes on, which adds a lot of humor to this story that can be a little, serious and scary. but that it's just a nice humorous element that Tracy Baptiste puts in there. So he's really nervous to tell anybody. He doesn't have anybody he can trust. He's trying to figure it out on his own. He doesn't know how he got like this. Was he an experiment? Is it something genetic? So he ends up opening up to his the kids that he's living with, and they kind of go on this big uh, scary adventure to figure out why he does this and if it's okay. Um, it was, yeah, it was fascinating and it was great. And just to see, if he's going to use his powers for good or evil or not at all. Yeah, it's a good one.
It reminds me of Lemillion in My Hero Academia. He loses his clothes every time he goes through matters, so they had to create a suit specifically for him. So
Yes.
can you open up the sorry, go ahead.
I was just kind of going to go off on a superhero tangent.
Go, because I'm
Yeah.
quite curious to now we're bringing this in. This is the second time. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Not that I'm
Okay.
disagreeing with you. I welcome it.
I sort of consider superheroes under the sci-fi genre for two reasons. The first reason is that if someone likes sci-fi, they're probably more open to superheroes than someone who is just reading fantasy. And I think that's trappings. That's just, they have magical jets. It's the modern world, which obviously does not make it sci-fi, but I think it kind of like helps. It's one of the trappings that I think kind of works for it. There's actually some sci-fi that takes place not in the modern world, which is awesome. But anyway, so that's kind of one reason why I sort of lump it in when I'm doing reader advisory. I'll consider superheroes more of a sci-fi thing. I'll put a sci-fi sticker on them, often because there are sci-fi elements involved. So like X-Men, that's sci-fi. They explain it via genes. It's magic, but they're like the genes. So they try. There is also magic in X-Men, which is very confusing, but it's because it's been around for so long that that's just what happens in comic books. All this stuff gets loaded in together. That's why the Avengers are like this weird compilation of like Iron Man, sci-fi, like Thor,
God,
Alien.
divinity.
They're
That
like,
would be solidly in the fantasy realm for me because,
yeah, because they're like, yeah, he's a god. But then later in the Marvel movies, they're like, aliens, we came to Earth and you thought we were gods. And so we're kind of trying to ratchet down those fantasy trappings.
Sure.
And I think also, like Superman, he's an alien. There are sort of these scientific explanations for just straight up magic. Like, the results read very magic, but the explanation is he has weird genes. It's the sun. They try. There is an effort made. And so that actually leads me to my next recommendation. Is it my turn?
It is, and I will allow it. No,
Go.
it's
Yeah.
not that I would have allowed it. No, I think that I just to mention, it's just like one of those things. I'm like, that's something that I would often consider fantasy as somebody who reads about fae and gods and the divine, even if they're influential, like we're just like you. You just thought we were gods. It's like one of those things that I've always considered that more in the fantasy realm. So it is very interesting. I
Sure.
don't think making it an alien we said at the beginning though, aliens are often incorporated in sci-fi, and I think that could be both. Like sci-fi does not, or aliens don't necessarily make you sci-fi or fantasy, but it doesn't discredit you either. So I just wanted to hear it, and I loved your explanation. So
And I also think that like there doesn't have to be this complete divorce between sci-fi and fantasy. I think it's, you know what, it's fine.
I have a great
Everyone can
I
be
have an
happy.
example of this. So
Yeah,
we're gonna talk. Okay.
I love that.
Go ahead.
So the reason I kind of was dipping a bit more into the different genres within the constellation of sci-fi is because my next recommendation kind of uses sci-fi elements to incorporate a story that is just about being human.
Mhm.
And that is The Space Between Here and Now by Sara. And so it explains time travel time warp. So it's not like you go back in time and affect, but like you go back and experience time in the past is what happens. It is explained as a syndrome. So like some sort of not quite illness that this girl has, that occasionally she will disappear, and she literally disappears into the past, experiencing the past. And just she calls them episodes. But really, what it does is it kind of frames a story where she has like the longest episode she's ever had, where she disappears for 9 hours into the memory of her estranged mother. And so what it sort of like serves as a conduit. It cradles this story of her discovering her mother. This girl Amy has to, kind of travel around, like goes back to Korea to try to like, find stuff out about this and find out about her syndrome. So that really what the sci-fi does is it just kind of like frames the story about her discovering herself, discovering her mother. And it turns out to be like a really interesting story, and it does use sci-fi elements in kind of like the culmination where she realizes like she needs to fix this, she needs to like fix this in order to heal herself so that she does not continue to vanish for increasingly long periods. um this one is, I don't think most people would think of it as science fiction. I put the science fiction sticker on it. And I think there are a lot of books in the YA section that are like this, that use time loops. Time loops are super popular right now.
Mhm.
Uh, and usually they're introduced as something, something time loop. And now you're stuck in a time loop with this person and you're going to fall in love. Like that's going to happen. so, so oftentimes romances use sci-fi elements. Um, Thrillers use sci-fi elements. It's not like hard sci-fi, which as a term I don't really like because of like, what even is that, bro? Just
As
say you
we've
want space.
been discussing, yes.
Just say you want space and lasers. That's okay. So it's not like, oh, it's less sci-fi. I think like the elements are used for a different purpose. And I'm so glad that you mentioned like Andy Weir and The Martian, because I feel like that is like such a good example of sci-fi where it uses technology we have basically now and just like pushes us out just a little bit and tinkers with it and uses it to frame a different kind of story, a survival story. And that's a really popular thing to use sci-fi for, which I actually brought up another book that I'm in the YA section. Space Between Here and Now is in the YA section, obviously. The other one is Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves by Meg Long. And that one is a survival story. It is sci-fi. It is set on an ice planet. She got there, like her family lives on another planet. It's all like science based. So like the way she got there, science based, and all of the technology she has at her disposal is kind of real worldy. But basically, she's on this ice planet. She's surviving. She's with a bunch of wolves. And it's this interesting story that like this didn't have to be framed this way, but a lot of the elements that work their way into the story are kind of these, sci-fi elements of, space travel, advanced technology, stuff like that. So it's kind of fun to hunt and pick, and frustrating sometimes when you're trying to put a sticker on something. You're like, how sci-fi is this? But again, that's not really the question. It's like there's elements involved. And the question that I ask myself is like, people who like sci-fi, will they want to read this?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good point. I think that is, we're trying to group things based off of what we think people will be searching for. And
mhm.
so we have upstairs in the adult section, we have a fantasy, we have romance, we have mystery, as well as sci-fi, all in their own separate sections. And so a lot of things, specifically sci-fi, are catch-alls for more of these elements. So, like you said, the time loops, the time travel, that's often put into sci-fi because people are more likely to read them in kind of a contemporary or futuristic setting. Not that it hasn't occurred in fantasy, it's just more you are probably expecting people to want to read that in the sci-fi realm. So.
Yeah.
And this was not on my list of things to discuss, but because your book was so cute, I do want to recommend This Is How You Lose a Time War by Amal El Motar, and I'm sorry since I'm making it really randomly. I unfortunately did not have a chance to look that up. But that one also has to deal with space travel. It's between two entities, or not space travel, I'm sorry, time travel, two entities that are at war with each other. You kind of have the natural aspects, those who are born of the earth, trying to compete with the robots. And so they are both going through the time frame or through the timelines, trying to cut each other out of major events that happen that push their agendas throughout history. And it's ultimately a love story. So it is this two characters, blue and red, who are slowly falling in love with each other. They are at the top of their classes in both on both sides, and they leave little clues for each other. At first, it's like little appreciations, like I see what you did there, how you cut me off there. I appreciate that. Solid nod to I was watching you do this. That was very interesting that you did this, like mutual respect for each other, and then just this, just a developing romance or love, not romance, love. And so it's very sweet. So I wanted to recommend that because it's speaking of time loops, that one was very I like and time travel itself. I really loved how it played with string, people talk about string theory. I'm not gonna, sorry. I was about to go really deep and no. So just basically, is history solid? And this plays with like if something happens in the past, can you affect the future? And this is like not necessarily. So you go back and affect different things at different times, and that can lead to different outcomes type of thing. But I did love the nature elements and the sci, or in terms of the technology and element as well. So since I'm throwing that in randomly, I will consider that my recommendation for that. You had so we're holding Amy hostage because we had so many recommendations and we were so excited to talk
I'm
that we
here for
already,
it.
yeah, we're holding you hostage. So Caitrin, what's your next pick?
Gosh. So I
Yeah.
have two more. One definitely riffs off of what you were just talking about, but I think I'm going to circle back to that. I'm going to stay in YA for right now, and I'm going to go back to another graphic novel. And it does sort of work into this idea of like sci-fi being based even in like scientific theories. So like other dimensions, often considered sci-fi. I and it just occurred to me is that you see this in fantasy a lot, but like the rules are like if it comes from a talisman, fantasy.
Yeah, that's true.
If it comes from like the government, sci-fi.
Absolutely. Yes.
Um,
My next book will discuss that. So
oh, good. I'm excited. Anyway, so this is from Brian K. Bonin. Paper Girls.
I love paper
This one
girls.
is pretty famous. It's an award winner because he just can't lose.
Bobs.
uh, and this one I really liked because this one is kind of Stranger Things-esque. So if you like sort of like scrappy kids in the 80s running into like cosmic horror, yeah, uh, Paper Girls, you'll love it. So it is a group of paper girls in the 80s, I believe, and they basically come across like this interdimensional uh, device. It's someone's basement, and they kind of get it's sort of a survival story. They get strewn across dimensions. They run into like um, the like future selves and government entities and interdimensional monsters, stuff like that. So like very Stranger Things vibes, just kind of using that whole like other dimension device thing, plus government interference. That's always like a hallmark of sci-fi.
Yeah, I was
So I
about to say
highly,
that's more than going to like the other world or something that's in
yeah,
Stranger Things. So government
yeah, well,
surveillance.
yes, yeah. And so yeah, this one is like I said, in the teen section, it can get pretty rough in some parts, but it is a great kind of it involves like a coming of age story in there as well as like blossoming relationships. They're all fairly young, but they're like young teenagers, and so going like first like realizing, oh, I might be in love with my friend, um, amidst all of the interdimensional hooey that they have to deal with. I just said hooey. It's a new one. But yeah, it's yeah, so that highly recommend that one. Uh it kind of goes hand in hand, I'd say, well, not hand in hand, but it's kind of up there with the comic book series Saga, which I think I mentioned the very first video of these that we made because I love the series so much. And it's interesting that you were mentioning kind of like in How to Win the Time War, the Earth versus robots. In Saga, they have kind of the fantasy planet versus the sci-fi planet. And they kind of, they butt heads, and except for two of them who realize that they love each other and they make a baby. But Saga as well is like kind of like this sprawling, everything weird stuff happening. And that's more of like kind of space opera-esque than Paper Girls is, but it's kind of another one of those modern staples of sci-fi graphic novels. So I thought I would give it a mention.
I agree. I love Paper Girls. So and Saga. So my next pick is by Annie Davenport. It is The Blood Trials. And I am recommending this one. It's a duology, so there's two in the series. And I'm recommending this because this is solid sci-fi and fantasy together. The world has fought divine, and so they have created medicine or elixirs, things that they can inject into them to give them enhancements. So that is very well established. You are following Ikenna, who is a Black female candidate in this, or soldier in this kind of war training college. First at school, she's young, and then she's advancing to this top tier elite group of people that she's trying to find a place in. She also has divine blood in her. So she is constantly trying to hide it because, of course, everybody wants her dead if this is an option. And so she is constantly struggling with misogyny. Racism still exists. People don't want her kind there in either alien form or divine form or her skin. And all this kind of culminates in the assassination of her grandfather. And so she enrolls in the school to try to get to the top tier so she can start investigating who done it, basically. And these are brutal. So if you're not somebody who likes intense brutality, again, they are taking this to the extreme where people can get very seriously hurt and then very seriously or very quickly healed from these accidents. So they are constantly put into these extreme circumstances, which may be hard for some people. But I love the blend of using the science. So we were fighting this divine, often this fantasy aspect where magic just exists. They have these powers. They call upon the moon and they're able to go into get certain abilities. We have battled these gods and we have developed weapons in order to fight them. And so I recommend this if you want to get that strong sci-fi fantasy blend to kind of see how people are blending and just jumping rope with those genres. I highly recommend it. Her next book is actually coming out in the fall, and that is very strongly in the fantasy. So she's definitely somebody to keep an eye out for because she likes to jump, like jump between genres. And so I think that she's going to be something where a lot of people can enjoy what she has written. So that is
Very
that.
cool.
And then you have one more and I have one more, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's really funny to follow that one up with my last pick. I know that Amy is really excited about this one.
I am so excited.
As you should be.
So
This is one that I picked because it is an entry into the genre that is so unusual, and I feel like I want more of it because we know that cozy fantasy is becoming this huge booming thing. I posit cozy sci-fi.
Yep.
And what's more than cozy sci-fi, it is a utopian book. So dystopian is, as I said, huge with like the youths, and still continues to be. But this one it takes place in basically a utopian world. And it is called A Song for the Wild Bill. And this is by Becky Chambers. This is the first one of a duology. It is a very short book. It's itty bitty. But it is absolutely beautiful. So basically the premise of the world is that centuries ago, robots became self-aware, put down their tools, and they said, "This is great. Thanks. We're out. We'll come back and check up on you." Robots vanished into myth. The world progressed, and it progressed in a great way. We live in a utopia. Everyone's needs are met. There's a very sweet, kind of like homemade and eco-friendly, and that is huge in this book, like the kind of eco solar punk aspects of this book. Solar punk is basically like yeah, just like the civilization is powered in eco-friendly terms. So that's great. There's this huge wild that, people don't typically go into. People live in kind of in and amongst forests and things like that. There is a big city where our main character begins. And so the main character is a monk who is a tea monk. And so their job is they have and it's actually very cute. They were in a cloister and they're like, I want to do something different. And their cloister was super supportive. They're like, we got you. We are going to get you a bike with a little caravan attached, and you can go around and serve tea to people and listen to their problems. And that is literally this monk's job. And it is so cozy and comforting. So this, this character is Dex. They are in their, I want to say, early 20s. So they're sort of discovering themselves. That's why they kind of want the job change. And they start out, it's really funny. They start out actually kind of like really bad at being a tea monk. Like they have this sort of like rocky period where they're like, they get the tea kettle out and they just sort of feel like they've failed to like listen to people's problems. So there's a lot of like Dex's problems are all internal. Like Dex doesn't know what they're doing with their life. They just kind of want to find a purpose, which is interesting because then they head through the wilderness on route to another town, and they discover in the wilderness a robot. It is a surviving robot who has come back to honor that promise of checking in on humanity. And the robot's like, great, what do you need? And and so a lot of the book is really kind of Dex grappling with that question of like, what does humanity need and what do I need? And so it's just Dex and this robot kind of traveling through this beautiful, beautiful landscape, meeting people. Dex's deity is actually the bear of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
I love it so much. I like their talisman is like this little bear and like just like has a honey pot. And so it's all very cute. But I think that the problem that they're having, this internal problem of like, what do I want to do with my life? Who am I? Is actually like pretty serious. Like it's not a wholly like fluffy book because Dex really does have like a lot of these, doubts about themselves. They don't know where they're supposed to go. They don't know if they're
Existential
good.
crisis. Yes.
Existential crisis. I'm 24. What's happening? um, so Dex and the robot, kind of complete their travels together. Dex takes the robot and teaches it about the civilization that we've built, how like there's no real money, we just sort of exchange favors and things like that, and how you can like accumulate favors. I love one point where the robot's like, well, what do you do if you see that someone's accumulated all these favors? And Dex is like, I'd check in on them. It's very sweet. So yeah, and like I said, it is the first book of a duology. The next one is Prayer for the Crown Shy, which kind of continues the journey. And yeah, I just think it's such an unusual and lovely sci-fi book where it's like, optimistic, saying we made good choices. That doesn't erase all of our problems, but we can live in this beautiful world as well. Anyway, very sweet. That's my last pick.
It is very sweet.
I love that you brought that one up because I wouldn't have, yeah, cozy and science fiction don't usually, yeah,
It's
merge.
an emerging trend in literature. So we've always had slice of life, which kind of
Mhm.
has defined the cozy trend until now. And
Yeah.
then cozy mysteries have existed for a long time. So
Yeah.
Agatha Christie is often rolled into that now, whether you would have defined her as that in the past is more like because we have psychological thrillers now. I think that we are like, no, she's solidly like, I'm not going to leave with nightmares if I read her. Cozy fantasy is kind of trying to define itself, because what makes a cozy fantasy? Is it that nothing really bad happens, or is it just people trying to, again, slice of life, Travis Baldree, like Legends and Lattes, where people are just like, I'm trying to start a coffee shop? Or is it more like people just finding peace, or, some of our favorite series like the Greenhouse. I am totally drawing a
Yes.
blank. Yeah. Uh, but sci-fi, like how does that look in the realm of sci-fi? And I think Selma the Wild Build, or yeah, is one of those that it would be solidly like a good recommendation for a cozy sci-fi. So
And
Yeah.
she has several other books that are longer. So I highly
yeah,
recommend actually Becky Chambers in general. She's
yes.
awesome.
I had to go. I was typing it up because I always get the title of, like, when I'm introducing people to sci-fi is
I know.
like the funny aspects of it, the long way to a small angry planet. I always
Yes,
mix up some element of it. I always have to
absolutely.
with the fact that it's absolutely fabulous. It's one of those that that would have been like another Douglas Adams, like right up there. She's often
Mhm.
grouped. If you like him, you'll like her type of thing. So my last pick is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. So this is a first in the three-part Themis Files trilogy. And the story follows Rose at the beginning, who is a young girl who falls into a pit. And as people come to rescue her, they all realize that there is something unusual that's happening at the bottom of this pit. And it is defying everybody who tries to understand it. Flash forward, you have Rose Frankfurt, who comes in, and she's now a physicist who is trying to understand this alien remnant that has been left on Earth. And spoilers, you can end it now, and this now. You can jump ahead for a couple minutes, but ultimately it comes to be uh, discovered that it is a part of a robot. And so that sets off a race across Earth, basically, for people to find the various aspects of this alien remnant robot. And then everybody, of course, is like, what does that mean? I think we can all understand what that means. If there is a robot left on Earth, there must be other robots left somewhere in the universe. And so that immediately leads to, okay, what can the robot do? Which, of course, we know that eventually it can cause destruction. And then uh, and then who owns this, who is responsible for this, and then ultimately who gets to control this. What I really like about it is the multi-narrative aspect. So this follows multiple viewpoints, those of the physicists who are trying to understand it, the people who are trying to drive it. So you have the perspective of the people who are trying to learn how to navigate it, but you also have the various um, uh, documents. You have the video recordings, you have the military records, or interviews and personal journals that were left behind. And each chapter, it kind of switches between back and forth. I highly recommend this as a audiobook because it is narrated by it has multiple narrators, and it's just fabulous. Some audiobooks add background noise, so to try to make that more entertaining, I find that very distracting. So I like to say that this one is just simply multiple narrators voicing, conversations where they can be having the same conversation. It's not all read by one person, it's people having conversations with each other. So I highly recommend that one. All three books are absolutely fabulous, but the audiobook itself is just an absolute delight to listen to. And that's my final pick. So, Caitrin, any last words on sci-fi?
Oh my gosh.
I guess
I
mine, I
feel
will mention, sorry, that going back to your first recommendation, Amy, where you're like, oh, I'm not sure if it can exist on Earth. That's exactly why I chose it, to show that science fiction doesn't necessarily have to occur off our planet or in space.
Right.
So, sorry.
no worries. So I feel like we did very good, but there's so much under this umbrella that like there's so much that has like every time y'all mentioned a book, I was like, oh yeah, this other book. Oh
Hmm.
yeah, this other book.
Same.
A truly oh my gosh, an absolutely remarkable thing.
Yes.
Um, I was just remembering that one by Hank Green.
Hmm.
Again, sort of like giant robots plus social media
Hmm.
was kind of the gist of his book. And I feel like sci-fi can do that. You know, you just kind of like if you want to address something that is happening now. And I feel like that's really what gave Star Trek its traction. I feel like we haven't talked enough about Star Trek.
We haven't. No,
I know,
it
but
literally
it's
did.
okay because I'm about to. Because I did want to give a shout out to a kind of book that I feel like gets really disregarded, but when I was a kid, it was one of my favorite series. So when you see like a Star Wars book or a Star Trek book, a novelization on the shelf, I think those get passed up a lot, and that is unfortunate because there are so many of those that are actually like super good books written by really talented authors. Um, and so I wanted to give a shout out to the Starfleet Academy books. When I was a child, one of my favorite ones was a book about Geordie LaForge when he was in the Starfleet Academy, playing capture the flag on a planet.
Mhm.
And it's all about like team building and helping out the other side. And it was great. And I remember it to this day. And I read so many of those books when I was a kid. So I just kind of wanted to kind of put that out there, I suppose, for anyone, looking for recommendations. Like, don't discount those. Like, obviously, I think like Star Wars, there's a lot of well, okay, it's kind of like a cult favorite. So a lot of those books get a lot of good press, Timothy Zahn's books, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I think the same thing exists for Star Trek. Some of my favorite authors have done Star Trek books, like Barbara Hambly did a few Star Trek books as well as Star Wars books. So like they're out there and I think they're worth a read. And I think that, like if you like that property, like go for it. It doesn't matter that it's like, okay, this corporation said, right, author. Uh, it did. And sometimes, they knock it out of the park. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those that I read as a kid. And I think that they have value as well. So yeah.
I'll give a shout out. Another one,
Yeah.
Frankenstein by Mary
Yeah, I
Shelley.
wanted to, yes.
People, read that. That's like one.
It's
Read
so
it.
good.
It's
It's
often
so good.
considered one of the first. Now, there are people that definitely existed before Mary Shelley writing sci-fi. She has
Sure.
kind of become the icon, the mother of sci-fi.
Mhm.
That's not to discredit everybody else whose work was being done at the same time. However, it does hold up for a reason. There's a reason why movies are still made about it. In fact, I'm very curious about the most recent movie, which seems to be one of the most accurate, at least by the trailer, one of the most accurate representations I have seen of
Yeah.
Frankenstein. People need to do that. And then another shout out I wanted to give because we mentioned Andy Weir. The movie is coming out.
Project Hail Mary.
Project Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. So I recommend that as well. I'm like, people will know about that, but if you haven't, please go read that. I promise that the trailer did not give away everything that goes on in that movie.
Don't worry.
Anybody else you want to give a shout out to really fast? I have a whole list. Oh my gosh, I have so many people.
I
I'm like
know.
all of a sudden
There's
like this
there's
person.
so many. And every time that you would talk about it, I was like, oh my gosh,
Of
so much
course.
science fiction. One that I feel we have to talk about, especially for middle grade, A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh yeah.
Like, I know that
Yes.
we have the movie, but the book is just, it's beyond. For me, the movie was meh. Um, I loved the book when I was little. I think I probably read it 3 times.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, another one that's held up.
Oh,
And yeah.
Yeah,
Martha
I think
Wells.
that's
Sorry.
well,
Go.
yeah.
No, go.
I think yeah, that's another thing. Is that books like A Wrinkle in Time. You have read it. Many of you have. It's sci-fi. Like there are explanations. A wrinkle in time.
It's a wrinkle.
Anyway, kind of like based in theory that we know. So I guess like an appropriate sign off would just be like, within, you know, I keep saying constellation of sci-fi, there's probably something you love. And I would just say read everything, read all of it. You don't have to finish all of it, but I would say, dip a toe, get in there. If you're afraid of sci-fi, don't be. There is sci-fi for you because it is literally for everyone. Like if you like Westerns, there's I think her name is Dana Hoots.
Mhm.
Uh, they're YA sci-fi Westerns. There's Star Wars, basically a space Western. Things like that. So I feel like it's a very welcoming collection of genres. And I just think that it's a good thing to explore. short stories. Amy, I know that you have a book of sci-fi short stories in the young teen room. I have one in the teen room. There's a bunch upstairs.
Of course.
Um, Great way to discover new authors. A lot of the authors that you already read have possibly written in sci-fi. Just it's hard not to. If you branch out for realistic at all, I feel like they stumble upon it. So I encourage everyone to, take another look at it, take another look at the genre, peruse the section if you just sort of have glossed over it before. Take a look because it's not all just spaceships and lasers. If you like spaceships and lasers, you're already there. You're already with us. If you don't, take a look at the section. Take a look at other libraries. There's so much there that I think people will find to love.
Of course, we're always available in case you need. As you can see,
Yes.
what was once a very difficult topic for me to talk about, I'm all of a sudden like, as we said, oh, wait, maybe not so. I'm still branching out in graphic novels. So if you have any recommendations that you would like to make, of course, put those in the comment section down below. But we want to thank you for watching our video today on sci-fi recommendations. Check out our LibCon events going on this year in October 2025. You can also watch our previous videos here on YouTube, so you can see our previously recommended graphic novel, manga recommendations, as well as fantasy recommendations, if that is more of your thing. And then we want to wish you all a happy reading with your sci-fi. Bye, everyone.